Letter 13. The Holy Office. Rome, April, 1849. My dear Eugenio, thanks, my dear friend. I have learnt from my counsel that you have frequently asked for information concerning me, and you have cordially offered me every help. I did not expect less from your friendship, but in the horrible place where I found myself, no information could reach me. Now, after 2 years of suffering, I am brought out to see the light of day once more, and to enjoy that liberty which I never expected to regain. Perhaps you also feared that you had lost your friend forever. Not only do you find me again as the friend of your childhood, but as a brother in our common Father, and in our Savior, Jesus Christ. I, like Saul of Tarsus, through misunderstood religious zeal, fought against Christ, thinking to honor him by the doctrines and commandments of men. But he has prostrated me by affliction, and in it has manifested himself to me. That which the discussions held with my good friend, Signor Pasquale, did not do, the Lord has done. 2 years in the prison of the Inquisition, a long and serious meditation on the gospel, the sincere and fervent prayer of faith, has brought me to the knowledge of true Christianity. The Lord, whom I so ill knew, came himself to find me in my prison, and the Good Shepherd has brought back the wandering sheep. Much have I to tell you, and I do not know where to begin. My imprisonment, the trial, the sufferings, the conversion, the liberation, are all things that I should like to tell in a word. But this being impossible, I shall begin with my liberation, and give you an idea of what the prisons of the Holy Office are, and this will serve also to throw light upon my trial. But do not expect a studied or poetical description. I shall tell you in all simplicity, according to my wont, what I myself have seen. It was the 27th of March, towards sunset, when a tumult, the noise of persons tramping heavily, mingled with voices, of which one could not distinguish the sounds, made itself heard in the corridor which led to my prison. I heard the doors of the prison open with a great noise, and then I heard cries, threats, and oaths resound in that corridor. Being ignorant of what had happened in Rome, I did not know to what to attribute such noise, and thought I had come to my last hour. I, therefore, threw myself on my knees and began to pray and commend my soul to God. Then I heard the door of my prison violently opened, and I saw enter first a man of short stature, who threw himself on my neck, embraced me, and bathed me with the tears that fell from under his green spectacles. It was the minister Sterbini, author of the decree for the abolition of the Holy Office. He said to me, "You are free," and left me. I was excessively weak, and from the long inactivity in that narrow and damp prison, had almost lost the power of walking. 2 men of those who had followed Sterbini took me in their arms, and carried me as in triumph across the courtyard, in the midst of a crowd of people, who cried, "Death to the Pope! Long live the Republic!" I was placed in a room where there were other liberated prisoners, and here those good people, so different from their priests, took every care to restore us with bread, wine, and cordials. Having visited all the prisons, and liberated all the prisoners, Sterbini returned to us, and asked each of us whether we wished to be taken. When the question was asked me, I replied that, being a foreigner, I had no relations in Rome, and prayed him to allow me to be conducted to the council of my nation. "You shall go to your council," said the minister to me, "but not in this state. You must first regain a little strength." Then one of the gentlemen present prayed me to accept the hospitality of his house. I accepted with gratitude, was placed in a carriage, and went to the house of that good Roman, and am still with him, treated as if I had always been the greatest friend of his family, I who had never known him. Through the kind attention of my host, and the solicitous care of an excellent doctor called in by him, I was in a few days restored. In the meantime, the house of the Holy Office was opened to the public. A decree of the 4th of April had ordained that instead of destroying it to make a piazza with the infamous column, it should be adapted for a free dwelling place for poor families, and the bricklayers began their work for that purpose. My host prayed me to accompany him to serve as guide, in order that he might visit and become acquainted with these prisons. I consented, a little reluctantly. The building of the Roman Inquisition presents in its exterior a simple and severe style of architecture. The solitariness in which it stands, the gigantic building of the Vatican which stands over against it, the iron door by which it is entered, the profound silence that reigns around, give to the edifice a fearful aspect. It is composed of 2 rectangles and a trapezium united. The front part of the building, which opens on the road, is formed from the ancient palace of Friar Michael Ghialieri, who, when he became Pope under the name of Pius V, transformed his palace into inquisitorial prisons. It was that Pius V, afterwards canonized, who excited Charles IX to the famous butchery of Saint Bartholomew. The Inquisition, receiving this palace as a gift, adapted it to be used as a dwelling by the Most Reverend Father Commissary and his 2 companions, and Monsignor, the assessor. The other rectangle was added for prisoners. We ascended the wide staircase, which led to a magnificent covered portico. On the left we saw a vast hall, which led to 2 magnificent apartments, one for Monsignor the assessor, the other for the Father Commissary. The apartments were almost wholly unfurnished, because those reverend personages, foreseeing the storm, had saved the furniture. We went along the portico and entered the hall of the congregations, or of the tribunal. A colossal coat of arms of Pius V, facing the lower end, an armchair for the Father Commissary, and behind this a great crucifix, an oblong table covered with green cloth, with a score of armchairs for the councillors, comprised all in this room. Thence we passed on to the archives. An inscription in large characters over the door forbade entrance under pain of excommunication. Nevertheless, we all entered a large room, the 4 walls of which were covered with shelves full of papers. A certain number of tables, with all necessaries for writing, were also in this first room, which is called the Cancellaria. In it were all the modern processes from the middle of the past century until now. Thence we proceeded to the library. This is composed of the following books: all the jurisprudence of the Inquisition, the bulls of the popes, the acts of councils, sentences of the Inquisitions of Spain, of Portugal, and of and of Goa, all the books that speak of the laws and of the inquisitorial proceedings, all the works that speak either in favor of or against the Inquisition, published in whatever language. But that which is the most precious and rare is the complete collection of all works published by the Italian reformers, works for the greater part unknown to the most erudite bibliophiles, because entirely destroyed. I was astounded to see how many Italians had written against the Roman Church. Still more precious is the collection of all the evangelical manuscripts, which the Inquisition, with its eyes of Argus, knew how to possess itself of, and which are all preserved in that library. The third part of the archives contains the ancient trials beginning from Pius V. There are the trials of Galileo, of Carnesecchi, of Aionio Paleario, of Luigi Pascali, and of all the others who fell into the hands of the Holy Office. From the archives, we passed to another hall, quite dismantled. The two side doors led to the apartments of the so-called Companion Fathers. I wished to enter the compartment of the second companion, which I well knew, having been there many times to undergo examination. But a guard who was posted at the door prevented our entrance, showing us an open trap door. My blood froze in my veins at the sight, thinking how many times I had passed over it, and that it might have been my tomb. I asked if we could go down to look, and the guard showed us a flight of steps. We descended, and they led us to a recent opening made in the wall, passing through which we were in the trap, lighted only by an open grating. It was subterranean, like a sepulchre. Greasy, black, and soft earth covered the ground, a part of which earth had been moved aside, and human bones cracked under our feet. We could scarcely contain ourselves at such a sight. My host fumed with indignation. I was full of horror, and we came out. We went to look at the other part of the building, where the prisons are. A damp courtyard filled with nettles is in the middle. Around it are little doors with large bolts, indicating that here was the place of the old prisons. All the doors were open, and we entered some of them. They are small cells, capable of containing one person. A little square aperture over the door, guarded by large and close iron bars, gave a glimmer of light and a little air from the damp courtyard. The paving and the walls were also very deep. Under these cells there are subterranean prisons, which for some time have not been in use. They are made from the ruins of the ancient circus of Nero, which was there. These rough stones seem to have been always condemned to suck up the blood and tears of those who witnessed for Christ. In one of these dungeons there was a stone staircase, which led to a still deeper dungeon. It was destined to receive those unfortunate ones who were condemned to be walled up to die. The skeletons that were found here indicated the mode of their barbarous execution. They let down these unfortunate ones with their hands and feet tied. They buried them up to the breast in dry lime, mixed with earthen cement, and left them there, closing the grating above. The positions of these skeletons showed the horrible struggle they must have had before finding death. We came out of that horrible abode and continued to visit the old prisons. A little corridor on the left of the courtyard described led to another yard, smaller and worse than the first. In it were 60 small cells used as prisons, divided into 3 floors, 20 on each floor. In many of these cells, there was an enormous iron ring, made to open and shut with a padlock. In some, this ring was fixed in the wall. In others, in a stone in the pavement. In the middle of one such prison was a round stone. The governor caused it to be raised. It covered a well, without water, of course, in which were skeletons. It is not known whether it served for the living or for the dead, but I think for the dead. A touching spectacle in the midst of such horrors were the inscriptions, half obliterated, which we read on the inner wall. We read in one of them, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." In another, "The caprice and villainy of men will not avail to separate me from thy church, O Christ, my only hope." In another, "Blessed are they that are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." These were the inscriptions made by the persecuted. Let us now see those of the persecutors. We passed on to visit the modern prisons. They are divided into 2 stories. Each one has the form of a monk's cell, except that the window is very high up. Over every door there is a crucifix, not, indeed, expressing the moving prayer, "Father, forgive them," but with a ferocious and menacing expression to inspire fear. Within, there is a passage from the Bible, written in large characters, and these passages contain all that is most terrible in the law and the prophets, never a passage of pardon or of consolation. In the dictionary of the Inquisition, these words are not to be found. Mercy and compassion towards heretics are, according to the Inquisition, a great sin, and establish the suspicion of heresy. In my prison, for example, there was the 6th verse of Psalm 109. "Set thou a wicked man over him, and let Satan stand at his right hand." In another prison was verse 17 of the same psalm. "As he loved cursing, so let it come unto him. As he delighted not in blessing, so let it be far from him." In another, the 19th verse of Deuteronomy 28, "Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out." This is a specimen of what the Inquisitors quote from the Bible. There remained to be seen the chamber of torture. It was in one of the lowest and most hidden dungeons. It had no window. A door and a passage afforded the current of air necessary for respiration. No other light penetrated, but that from lighted torches and the brazier. We went down by stone steps. The instruments of torture were no longer there, because, to tell the truth, torture was abolished at the end of 1815. But we still saw the great hook in the midst of the vault, to which the pulley was attached for the torture of the cord. We saw in a stone fixed in the wall the iron destined to sustain the plank of the wheel. A large chimney close by indicated the place of torture by fire. Now this chamber is changed to a cellar to keep the bottles of the Holy Inquisitors fresh. Near to the cellar, the governor of the Republic had caused an old wall to be broken down, on account of work which was to be done. But God willed that they should begin with the demolition of a very recent wall, made with lime and clay, colored so as to appear old. Having pulled down the wall, another cellar was found, but instead of bottles, they found in it 2 ovens made like beehives, And in these furnaces there were still calcined human bones. You cannot believe the horror that such a discovery occasioned the Romans. Every one believed that the torture by fire was abolished, but the Holy Inquisition never derogates from its own laws, and when it can no longer burn heretics in Campo de Fiori, when it can no longer burn in the open air, because the attacks would be seen, or because the smoke would be seen, it burns them in its furnaces. We came out of so dreadful a place, never to return there again. Dear Eugenio, this was when your poor friend... Is it when? Or this was where your poor friend groaned for 2 long years. But everything well considered, I am satisfied to have been there. God has made use of the iniquity of men, even of those men for whom I had the greatest esteem, to convert me to himself. Without this affliction, I do not know what I might have become. In the meantime, I do not know what has become of my friends. Tomorrow I shall occupy myself about them. I shall go to the Swiss Council and shall learn something. Oh, that I might find my dear Signor Pasquale. I have not yet determined where to go, but as long as I am in Rome, I will often write to you and relate to you the whole story of my imprisonment and of my conversion. Adieu, dear friend. Love me and believe me always. Your most affectionate Enrico.